The silence of the intensive care unit was broken only by the constant beep of the heart monitors. Marina adjusted the white sheet over the motionless body of her mother, Mrs. Gloria, observing every detail of that face which was once so vibrant and now lay expressionless. 3 months. 3 long months since the sudden stroke had stolen the consciousness of the matriarch of the Davies family. The nurse from the previous shift handed over the clipboard with the notes. Marina read quickly, her trained eyes searching for any change in vital signs. Nothing. All the same. Always the same. She sat in the chair beside the bed, held her mother's cold hand, and whispered as she did every night. "I'm here, Mum, I won't leave you alone." The promise echoed in Marina's memory like a sacred mantra. She was only 8 years old when Mrs. Gloria, a widow with not a penny in her pocket, held her 3 children's hands and swore they would never be separated. Marina, the youngest, took those words so seriously that she shaped her entire life around them. While Roderick, the middle brother, chose a career as an executive in New York City, and Christine, the eldest, built her luxurious life in Los Angeles as a fashion entrepreneur, Marina remained. She abandoned her dreams of traveling the world, studied nursing at the public university in Manchester, and returned to the rural areas of the Midlands. She returned to care. Her phone vibrated in her scrub's pocket. It was Roderick again. "Marina, we need to talk about Mum's business. The farm is idle. The cosmetics company is losing market share. You can't just stay there taking care of her and ignore reality." She typed a dry response. "I'm doing what matters. You two worry about money." But a part of her knew Roderick was right about one thing. The empire built by Mrs. Gloria over 40 years was crumbling. Sun Valley Farm, with its flower and aromatic herb plantations, only functioned because the oldest employees still honored their boss's memory. Gloria's Essence, the natural cosmetics company that started in the home kitchen and became a regional benchmark, was adrift without leadership. Marina stood up to check the IV bag when something caught her attention. The waste bin next to the bed was overturned, crumpled papers scattered on the floor. She frowned. The cleaning staff was impeccable. This didn't make sense. She bent down to pick up the papers and froze. One of Mrs. Gloria's hands, always so clean and well kept, had a dark stain between her fingers. Ink. Marina approached, her heart accelerating. Her mother was in a deep coma without voluntary movements. How on earth was there ink on her hand? She called the nurse in charge, an elderly woman named June who had worked there for decades. "June, did anything strange happen here today? Any unusual visitors?" The nurse thought for a moment. "Oh yes, 2 visitors came in the morning. They said they were Mrs. Gloria's children, a tall man in a suit and a very elegant woman. They stayed for almost an hour. Oh, and a gentleman also came, a lawyer. He said he needed some documents signed. I found it strange, but he showed authorization from the family." Marina's blood ran cold. Roderick and Christine had been there, and they hadn't told her. And a lawyer. Which lawyer? What documents? "Do you have his name?" June shook her head. "He left a card, but I don't know where I put it. I can look tomorrow." Marina thanked her and waited for the nurse to leave. Then, with trembling hands, she took out her phone and opened the discreet security camera app she had installed 3 weeks ago. It wasn't something she liked to do, invading her own mother's room's privacy, but reports of mistreatment in hospitals had made her paranoid. The camera was tiny, hidden inside an artificial flower pot, with a perfect angle to the bed. She scrolled the recording back to the morning, 8:43 a.m. The door opened and 2 figures entered. Marina immediately recognized her siblings. Roderick, in his impeccable navy suit and arrogance stamped on his face. Christine, in her designer dress and heels that echoed pretentiousness with every step. She turned up the volume. The voices were low but audible. "We have half an hour before anyone notices," Christine said, looking down the corridor. "The lawyer will arrive in 10 minutes." Roderick approached his unconscious mother and, without any display of affection, lifted her arm. "We need to practice first. She's too limp." Marina felt nausea rising in her throat. What were they doing? 15 minutes later, a man in dark glasses entered the room carrying a leather briefcase. "Good morning. I brought the documents you requested. 3 copies. Total transfer of ownership of Sun Valley Farm and Gloria's essence to Mr. Roderick Davies and Ms. Christine Davies. We just need the owner's signature." "She can't sign," Roderick said coldly. "As you can see, she's in a coma." The lawyer smiled. "That's why we charge an additional fee for the service. We'll just help her." Marina watched, paralyzed by shock and fury, as Roderick held her mother's right hand. Christine positioned a pen between her inert fingers. The lawyer pointed to where to sign. "Hold tight," Christine said. "She won't feel anything." They moved Mrs. Gloria's hand over the paper. Once, twice, 3 times. On each document, they forged a signature that would never be given consciously. Marina saw the ink stain her mother's skin. She saw the coldness in her siblings' eyes. She saw the betrayal materialized in high definition. When they finished, the lawyer put the documents away and handed a card to Roderick. "In 72 hours, the records will be changed. The farm and the company will be yours, officially." "Great," Christine replied, already heading for the door. "What about Marina?" Roderick shrugged. "She'll freak out, obviously. But once everything is registered, it won't matter. We'll offer her a pittance to keep quiet. If she accepts, great. If not, her problem. Without evidence, without a lucid mother to contest, she has no way to fight." The two left laughing. Laughing, as if they had just told a joke and not committed a cruel fraud against their own mother. Marina turned off the video. Her hands trembled so much she almost dropped her phone. Tears of anger streamed down her face, but she wiped them away violently. No, it wasn't time to cry. It was time to think. They thought she was just the naive little sister, the nurse who lived to care for others and understood nothing of business or law. They thought she would accept crumbs and stay silent. They thought they had won. But Marina had learned something important during years of caring for patients. Patience is a weapon, and she had the proof. She had every second of that charade recorded. She had the ink still fresh on her mother's hand. She had 72 hours until the fraud became official. She made 3 copies of the video. One on her phone, one in the cloud, one on a flash drive she hid inside Mrs. Gloria's Bible. She photographed her mother's hand, the waste bin, everything. Then she gently cleaned the ink, offered silent apologies, and began to plot her plan. Her phone rang again. Roderick. "Marina, are you there?" She took a deep breath, controlled her voice. "Yes, Roderick, is there a problem?" No, I just wanted to let you know Christine and I stopped by this morning. We wanted to see Mum, but you weren't there. We're worried about the future of her businesses. I think we need a family meeting, urgently." Marina smiled coldly at the phone screen. "Of course, Roderick. We can meet whenever you want. How about tomorrow? At the family lawyer's office, there are some important documents that need signing. I'll be there." She hung up and looked at her sleeping mother. Mrs. Gloria had built everything herself. She had worked from dawn till dusk, built a company from nothing, transformed a bankrupt farm into a prosperous business. And now her own children, the 2 she had pampered and supported for years, wanted to steal everything. But they had made a mistake, a fatal mistake. They underestimated Marina. War was declared, and it would be silent, calculated, relentless. Marina picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. On the other end of the line, a hoarse, familiar voice answered. "Hello, Cousin Henry?" "It's Marina. I need a lawyer, urgently, and I need someone I can trust blindly." There was a pause. Marina? The Marina who vanished off the map years ago? What happened? She looked at her mother, at the monitors, at the room that witnessed the betrayal. What happened is my family decided to teach me what war is, and I'm going to show them I learned the lesson very well. Henry Davies's office was in an old building in downtown Manchester, between a fabric shop and a bakery that exuded the smell of freshly baked goods. Marina climbed the 3 flights of stairs with the flash drive clutched in her hand, her heart pounding against her ribs. Henry greeted her with a tight hug. The last time they saw each other was at his wedding, 5 years ago. Before Marina completely isolated herself to care for her mother. He was grayer with some wrinkles around his eyes, but his smile was the same as when they were children running around the farm. "Cousin, you look different. Thinner, more tired." "I'm surviving, Henry. Barely. But I am." He gestured to a worn leather chair in front of a desk piled high with case files. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." Marina took a deep breath and began. She told him about Mrs. Gloria's stroke, about the exhausting months in the ICU, about her siblings' absence and their quick, perfunctory visits. She told him about the camera, about the video, about the ink on her mother's hand. When she finished, Henry was pale. "They forged the signature of a person in a coma? That's document forgery. Fraud and embezzlement. Marina, that's prison time." She shook her head. "I don't want them in prison. I want justice. I want them to lose what they tried to steal and learn that actions have consequences." Henry connected the flash drive to his computer and watched the video 3 times. With each playback, his expression grew more serious. When he finished, he took off his glasses and massaged his temples. "We have a solid case, very solid, but we need to act fast. You said they mentioned 72 hours? That was yesterday morning. We have less than 2 days. Then let's get to work. First, we need an updated medical report from your mother proving she has no motor capacity to sign anything. Second, we need to find her original will. Third, we'll file a preventive injunction to block any asset transfers. What about tomorrow's meeting? They're taking me to their lawyer." Henry smiled for the first time. "You'll go, and you'll use a recorder. I want to hear every word they say, every threat, every attempt at coercion. The more they talk, the more rope they'll give us." Marina left the office with a to-do list and something she hadn't felt in months: hope. She spent the afternoon rushing between the hospital and registries, gathering documents, talking to doctors, building her arsenal. Mrs. Gloria's neurologist, Dr. Cecilia Hayes, was categorical in her report. The patient presents complete paralysis of the right side, including upper limbs. Total impossibility of voluntary movement. Any signature attributed to her in the last 3 months is, without a doubt, fraudulent. Marina guarded the document as if it were gold. One piece, another piece of the puzzle. Night fell, and she returned to the ICU. Mrs. Gloria remained motionless, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. Marina held her hand again and whispered, "I'll fix this, Mum. I promise. I'll protect everything you built." The next morning, Marina put on her best outfit, black tailored trousers and a simple white blouse. She tied her hair in a bun, applied discreet lipstick, and looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't look like an exhausted nurse. She looked like a woman on a mission. The office of the lawyer hired by Roderick and Christine was in a glass skyscraper in Soho, Manchester's most sophisticated district. Marina entered the marble lobby, announced herself at reception, and was led to the 22nd floor. Roderick and Christine were already there, sitting in white leather armchairs drinking coffee from porcelain cups. The lawyer, a middle-aged man in an impeccable suit and an oily smile, extended his hand. "Marina Davies, I presume. I'm Dr. Fabian Nelson. It's a pleasure to meet you." She shook his hand without smiling. "The pleasure is mine." Christine didn't even stand up. "Good thing you came, Marina. We need to resolve this quickly. You know the situation with the company, the farm. Everything's falling apart," Roderick added, his voice as smooth as if he'd rehearsed the speech. "We're all concerned about our mother's legacy. That's why we took the initiative to organize things. You understand, right? You're busy taking care of her. You don't have time to manage businesses." Marina sat down slowly, crossed her legs, and stared at them. "I understand. Continue, Doctor." Nelson opened a folder and pushed some documents across the table. "Here are the administration transfer contracts for Sun Valley Farm and Gloria's Essence. With Mrs. Gloria's signature, which we have already obtained, we just need yours to formalize the transition." Marina picked up the papers and pretended to read them carefully. The tiny recorder, hidden in her trouser pocket, captured every word. "I see here that the transfer is total. It's not a temporary administration. You are assuming ownership." "Exactly," Roderick said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "It's better this way. Quick decisions, no bureaucracy. When Mum gets better, we'll give everything back if she gets better." The comment cut Marina like a blade, but she kept a neutral expression. "And me? What would be my participation?" Christine finally looked at her. "Marina, dear, you'll continue doing what you've always done, taking care of Mum, It's what you do best. As for the assets, well, you'll receive financial compensation. £500,000. It's more than fair for someone who never cared about business. £500,000. Mrs. Gloria's empire was worth more than 50 million. They were offering crumbs and expecting gratitude. Marina pretended to hesitate. That's a lot of money. Roderick visibly relaxed. Exactly. And think about it, Marina. You have no management experience. You know nothing about cosmetics or agriculture. If you try to manage it alone, you'll break everything in 6 months. Leave it to those who understand. She looked at the lawyer. And if I don't sign? Dr. Nelson's smile disappeared. It would be imprudent. Look, the owner's signature has already been obtained. Legally, you children are direct heirs. If you refuse to cooperate, we will have to pursue other avenues, lawsuits, blocks, things that can become very unpleasant and expensive. It was a veiled but clear threat. Sign or suffer the consequences. Marina put the documents back on the table and stood up. I need to think. It's an important decision. Christine scoffed. Marina, don't be dramatic. It's a yes or no. And I said I need to think. You waited 3 months to show up. You can wait another 24 hours for my answer. She left before they could protest. Her heart racing but her head cool. She had everything, every word recorded, every threat, every implicit confession of fraud. Henry listened to the recording in her car, parked in front of the building. When it finished, he was smiling. Perfect. They practically admitted the forgery. Now let's move to the next phase. We need to find your mother's original will. Do you know where she kept important documents? Marina thought. On the farm. She had a safe in the office, but I don't have the combination. Who does? Probably her godmother. Mrs. Adelaide. They were very close. Mrs. Adelaide lived in Cranbrook, the Davies family's hometown, 200 miles from Manchester. Marina hadn't seen her in years, since before Mrs. Gloria's stroke. But she knew her godmother was one of the few people her mother trusted blindly. They made the trip that same afternoon. The road cut through mountains and valleys, passing through small towns and old farms. Marina watched the landscape through the window, remembering when she was a child and made this journey every weekend, before New York City and Los Angeles stole her siblings, before ambition destroyed the family. Cranbrook was just as she remembered it. Cobblestone streets, colorful colonial houses, a main church in the center of the square. Mrs. Adelaide's house was on the outskirts of town, a simple, white-painted brick building with a garden full of roses. The old lady opened the door and froze when she saw Marina. Her expression changed from surprise to emotion in seconds. She pulled her goddaughter into a tight hug. Child of God, I thought I'd never see you again. How is your mother? Marina felt tears threaten, but held them back. She's fighting, godmother, and I'm here because I need your help. Sitting in the modest living room with coffee and cornbread on the table, Marina told her everything. Mrs. Adelaide listened in silence, her aged face growing darker and darker. When Marina finished, her godmother slowly stood up and went to an old cabinet. She returned with a carved wooden box. Your mother gave me this 6 months before the stroke. She said, if anything happened to her, I should give it to you, only to you. Marina opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, written in Mrs. Gloria's firm, elegant handwriting. The date was March, 4 months before the stroke. She read aloud, her voice breaking with each line. My dearest Marina, if you are reading this, it is because something has happened to me. I want you to know that I always knew the true nature of your siblings. Roderick was always weak, manipulated by those who offered advantages. Christine was always too ambitious for her own good. But you, my youngest daughter, have always been my anchor. Therefore, I left clear instructions in my will. You will inherit the administration of everything. The farm, the company, everything. Your siblings will receive their financial shares but will have no decision-making power. Protect what we built together. And remember, family is not who shares blood, but who shares sacrifices. I love you eternally. Gloria. Marina finished reading, and the tears finally fell. Mrs. Adelaide held her hand. Your mother was wise, child. She knew this day would come. The Manchester courthouse was packed that Thursday morning. Marina entered the main hall alongside Henry, holding a black folder that contained her arsenal. The video, the meeting recording, the medical report, and Mrs. Gloria's letter. She wore a simple grey suit, her hair tied back, no jewelry. She wanted to look like what she was, a daughter fighting for justice, not for money. Roderick and Christine were already there, accompanied by Dr. Nelson and 2 other lawyers in pinstripe suits. They occupied 3 chairs on the right side of the room, confident like those who already know the outcome of the game. Christine didn't even look at Marina. Roderick merely nodded, a cold and perfunctory gesture. Henry whispered, "Let them think they're clever. The more secure they feel, the greater the fall." The judge entered, a man in his 60s, white hair and an expression that made it clear he had seen everything in his career. Everyone stood up. "You may be seated. Case number 2354/2025. Action for nullity of documents and asset interdiction. Plaintiff, Marina Davies. Defendants, Roderick Davies and Christine Davies. Let's proceed with the facts." Dr. Nelson stood up first, all pompous. "Your Honor, this is an unfounded action motivated by family resentment. My clients, concerned about the assets of their gravely ill mother, took the responsible initiative to assume the administration of the family businesses. The transfer of ownership was done with the full consent of Mrs. Gloria Davies, duly documented and witnessed." He held up a copy of the forged documents. "Here is her signature, clear and incontestable." Marina felt her stomach churn, but kept her face serene. Henry remained seated, his fingers drumming lightly on the table, waiting. The judge examined the documents. The signature appears legitimate at first glance. What is the plaintiff's contention? Henry finally stood up. "Your Honor, the contention is simple. This signature is a fraud, and we have irrefutable proof of it." He approached the table and handed the judge a copy of the medical report. Dr. Cecilia Hayes, the neurologist responsible for Mrs. Gloria's case, attests that the patient has been in a deep coma since August of this year, with complete paralysis of the right side. She has no and never has had since the stroke the motor capacity to sign any document. Dr. Nelson tried to intervene. "Your Honor, medical reports can be interpreted in various ways. Our expert can contest." The judge raised his hand, silencing him. "Continue, Mr. Henry." Henry turned on a laptop and projected onto the screen in the room. "But we didn't stop at the medical report. We have something more compelling. With Your Honor's permission, I would like to present a security recording that shows exactly how this signature was obtained." Christine paled. Roderick shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Dr. Nelson tried to stand. "Your Honor, this is an invasion of privacy. This recording is illegal." The judge cut him off dryly. The recording was made by the patient's own daughter in the patient's own room to ensure her safety. "There is no illegality. Proceed." Henry pressed play. The room fell into absolute silence as the video was displayed. Marina observed the expressions changing. The judge, initially neutral, began to frown. The defense lawyers became visibly uncomfortable. Roderick looked at the floor. Christine had her arms crossed, her jaw tense. When the phrase, "hold tight, she won't feel anything," echoed through the room, the judge paused the video. That was enough. "Dr. Nelson, do your clients have anything to declare?" Dr. Nelson was pale. "Your Honor, my clients were unaware that this procedure was inappropriate. They believed they were acting in the best interest of the family." "Unaware?" The judge practically growled. "They forged the signature of a woman in a coma. That is not a lack of knowledge, it is a deliberate crime." Marina felt a wave of satisfaction, but she wasn't finished yet. Henry continued, relentless. "Your Honor, there's more. We request authorization to present an audio recording of a meeting held yesterday between the plaintiff and the defendants. In it, the fraudulent intent and the attempt to coerce my client into accepting the situation through a paltry financial offer are clear." The judge nodded. "Present it." The second recording was even more devastating. Roderick and Christine's voices, so confident in the meeting, now sounded arrogant and cruel in the courtroom. When the part about Marina having no experience and breaking everything in 6 months was played, the judge shook his head in disapproval. "And finally, Your Honor, we have this." Henry handed over Mrs. Gloria's letter, a letter written by the matriarch herself 4 months before the stroke, foreseeing exactly this situation and making her intentions about the assets clear. The judge read the letter in silence. When he finished, he looked directly at Roderick and Christine. "Did you know your mother's wishes?" Christine tried to speak, but her voice came out trembling. We thought she would change her mind, that she would trust us too." The judge interrupted. "Trust you? After you forged her signature? After you tried to steal the assets she built with decades of work?" He banged the gavel hard. "Decision. The property transfer documents are declared null and void and without legal effect. All changes in property records must be immediately reversed. The administration of Mrs. Gloria Davies's assets is temporarily placed under the guardianship of Marina Davies until the owner regains consciousness or until further judicial decision. Furthermore, I order the opening of a police investigation to investigate the crime of document forgery and fraud. Mr. Roderick Davies and Ms. Christine Davies are prohibited from approaching family assets or the patient without express judicial authorization. This hearing is adjourned." The gavel hit again. Marina felt her legs buckle. Henry held her arm, smiling. "We won." Across the room, Roderick stood abruptly and left without looking back. Christine remained standing, her eyes fixed on Marina. For a moment, it seemed she would say something, but she merely shook her head and followed her brother. Dr. Nelson put away his documents in silence, his face red with shame. Before leaving, he stopped beside Henry. "You played well." Henry didn't smile. It wasn't a game. It was justice. Marina left the courthouse with a strange feeling of victory and emptiness. She had won. She had protected her mother's legacy. But in doing so, she had completely destroyed any illusion of a united family. Roderick and Christine were not just greedy. They were criminals, and she had publicly denounced them. In the car park, Henry hugged her. "You did the right thing, cousin, I know, but why does it hurt so much? Because you still love them. And that's not weakness. It's humanity." That night, Marina returned to the ICU. She sat beside Mrs. Gloria and held her hand. "I did it, Mum. I protected everything. The farm, the company, everything is safe. But I lost my siblings. I lost the family you always wanted us to be." As if she could hear, Mrs. Gloria's monitors began to beep differently. Marina stood up alarmed and called the medical team. Nurses and doctors rushed into the room. Dr. Hayes arrived in seconds, checked the signs and smiled. "Marina, look." Mrs. Gloria was opening her eyes, slowly, with difficulty, but she was waking up. 3 months of silence ending right there, at that exact moment. "Mum?" Marina approached, tears streaming freely. "Mum, can you hear me?" Mrs. Gloria's eyes met her daughter's. A small, almost imperceptible movement, but it was there. Recognition. She squeezed Marina's hand back weakly. Dr. Hayes quickly checked her reflexes. "It's a miracle. She's responding. It will still take time for full recovery, but she's back." Marina couldn't stop crying. For weeks she had planned her revenge, fought in court, won the legal battle, but nothing compared to that moment. Seeing her mother open her eyes again. Over the next few days, Mrs. Gloria was transferred to a regular room and began rehabilitation therapy. Her speech was still slurred and difficult, but she could communicate. And the first thing she wanted to know was about her siblings. Marina hesitated but told her everything. The video, the fraud, the court. She expected to see anger or sadness on her mother's face. Instead, she saw resignation. "I knew," Mrs. Gloria whispered with effort. "I always knew." Marina held her hand. "What do we do now?" Mrs. Gloria closed her eyes, tired. "You saved everything. Now rest." But Marina couldn't rest. With the victory in court and her mother's recovery came a new responsibility, managing an empire that was on the verge of collapse. Sun Valley Farm needed urgent investments. Gloria's essence was losing market to larger competitors, and she, a 32-year-old nurse, had no idea where to begin. It was Mrs. Adelaide who gave the advice that would change everything. Her godmother visited the hospital and, sitting beside her goddaughter, said with her simple wisdom, "Marina, Your mother built all this herself, from scratch, without a degree, without experience. And do you know why? Because she had courage and honesty. You have the same things. The rest you learn along the way. Marina looked at her mother, who was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. Then she looked out the window at the city stretching below. She had won the first battle. Now came the real war, proving she was worthy of the trust her mother had placed in her. 6 months after the trial, Marina was sitting in the meeting room of Gloria's Essence, surrounded by charts showing sales declines and alarming financial reports. In front of her, 5 veteran executives of the company stared at her with expressions ranging from skepticism to pity. "How do you intend to reverse the 23% drop in sales in the last quarter?" asked Richard, the commercial director, a 50-year-old man who had worked there since its founding. Marina took a deep breath. She had spent the last few months studying every aspect of the business, sleeping 4 hours a night, balancing hospital visits with online administration and marketing courses. But theory was different from practice, and those men knew it. "We will reformulate the product line. Young consumers want real sustainability, not just green marketing. Our farm already produces organic ingredients. We will highlight that. And we will invest in online sales. 70% of our target audience buys online, but our website is a decade old." Richard crossed his arms. "And where will the money for that come from? I will sell my apartment and reinvest in the company, and I will look for investors who believe in the brand's potential." A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, the production director, a woman named Bernadette, smiled for the first time. Mrs. Gloria would do exactly that, risk everything to protect the dream. That approval, coming from someone who had known her mother from the beginning, was worth more to Marina than any business degree. In the following months, Marina plunged headfirst into transforming the company. She hired a design agency to reformulate the visual identity, maintaining the essence but modernizing the appearance. She launched a line of certified vegan products. She created a YouTube channel showing the entire production process, from harvesting on the farm to final packaging. The first few weeks were disastrous. Criticism on social media, suspicious suppliers, employees resistant to changes. Marina cried in the car before entering the company, but wiped away her tears and entered with her head held high. She couldn't show weakness. It was during a visit to the farm that she met Bruno. He was Mrs. Gloria's new physiotherapist, hired for home rehabilitation when she was discharged from the hospital. 35 years old, dark hair, kind eyes, and a smile that brightened even the most difficult days. "Your mother is making incredible progress," he said after a session. Yesterday she managed to stand for 30 seconds. Marina watched her mother, who was dozing in the armchair after the effort of therapy. "She's a warrior, always has been. Like you." Bruno looked at her with an admiration that made her blush. "I heard about what you did. Taking over everything yourself, transforming the company, it's impressive. Or it's madness, sometimes it's the same thing." They started talking more. After physiotherapy sessions, Bruno stayed for coffee. They talked about life, about dreams, about the difficulties of starting over. Marina discovered that he had lost his wife in an accident years ago and had dedicated his life to helping people regain movement, freedom, hope. "You remind me why I chose this profession," he confessed one night, sitting on the farm's veranda watching the sunset. "Seeing your dedication to your mother, to the company, to everything. It's inspiring." Marina felt something she hadn't felt in years, the possibility of not being alone, of having someone by her side not out of obligation or interest, but out of genuine choice. Meanwhile, the echoes of the trial reverberated. Roderick and Christine were formally indicted. They faced lawsuits that dragged on for months, expensive lawyers draining their savings. The local press covered the scandal with morbid pleasure. "Children try to steal inheritance from mother in a coma," the newspapers blared. Marina felt no pleasure in their downfall, but she also felt no pity. They had made their choices. It was Mrs. Gloria, already regaining speech with greater fluency, who brought up the subject for the first time. "I want to see your siblings." Marina was reviewing contracts in the living room. She looked up, surprised. "Mum, they tried to steal everything. They forged your signature. They lied. And yet they are my children." Mrs. Gloria held her daughter's hand with increasing firmness. I'm not asking you to forgive. I'm saying I need to see them. I need to say what I have to say." Marina reluctantly arranged the meeting. Roderick and Christine arrived at the farm on a rainy Saturday in April, driving simple cars and wearing ordinary clothes. The arrogance had disappeared, replaced by palpable shame. They sat in the living room, the three siblings and their mother, the silence heavy as lead. It was Mrs. Gloria who spoke first, her voice still trembling but firm. "You disappointed me more than I thought possible. I raised you to be people of character, to value family above money. And what did you do? You tried to rob me while I was defenseless." Roderick looked at the floor. Christine cried silently. "But I also failed you," Mrs. Gloria continued. "I pampered you too much. I gave you everything too easily. I didn't teach you the value of effort, so now I will teach you." She handed an envelope to each of them. Inside were legal documents. Marina read over her mother's shoulder and her eyes widened. "I am dividing my inheritance," Mrs. Gloria said. 60% to Marina for her loyalty and work, 15% to each of you, and 10% to a charity that supports victims of family fraud. Christine sobbed. "We don't deserve even that." "No, you don't deserve it. But I am your mother, and mothers forgive. They don't forget, but they forgive. If you want to be part of this family again, you will have to prove it. With actions, not words." Roderick finally looked up. "How?" Mrs. Gloria pointed to Marina. "Ask your sister. She's in charge now." Marina felt the weight of expectation. She looked at her siblings who had betrayed her trust, who had tried to destroy everything. But she also saw something new in their eyes, genuine regret. "You will start from scratch. Roderick, there are openings on the farm's production line. Christine, Gloria's Essence needs someone to organize the inventory. These are manual, low-paying jobs. If you accept, you will have the chance to prove you have changed." Christine wiped away her tears. "I accept," Roderick nodded. "Me too." In the months that followed, Marina observed with surprise the transformation of her siblings. Roderick, who had always worn expensive suits and commanded teams, now woke up at 5 in the morning to work harvesting lavender and chamomile. His hands, once soft, developed calluses. His pride, once inflated, was replaced by surprising humility. Christine, accustomed to dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants and international travel, spent her days in the dusty warehouse organizing boxes and taking inventory. She moved into a small flat in Cranbrook and learned to cook her own meals. A year passed. Gloria's Essence began to make a profit again. The vegan line was a success. Online sales tripled, and the company won international sustainability certifications. Marina was featured on the cover of a business magazine, celebrated as the young entrepreneur who saved a traditional brand. But it was at home, on the farm, that the biggest transformations were happening. During a family dinner, Roderick asked to speak. He looked at Marina with tear-filled eyes. "I want to apologize, truly. Not just for what I tried to do, but for all the years I wasn't here. For all the times I put money above you. Marina, you were always the best of us three, and I was envious of that. Envious of your kindness," Christine added, her voice choked. "Me too. I spent years chasing a life I thought would make me happy. Cars, clothes, travel. And in the end, the only thing that really made me feel something was working alongside you, feeling like I'm part of something bigger." Marina felt her own tears fall. It took time, but she could finally look at her siblings and see not the traitors, but the broken people who were trying to rebuild themselves. Mrs. Gloria, already walking with the aid of a cane, smiled. "This is family. It's not perfection. It's reconstruction." That night, Marina went out onto the veranda and found Bruno sitting on the steps, looking at the stars. He had become a constant presence on the farm, even after Mrs. Gloria no longer needed daily physiotherapy. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am. For the first time in a long time, I am." Bruno held her hand. "You know I love you, right?" Marina stared at him, surprised. He smiled, shyly. "Sorry to blurt it out like that, but it's true. I love you for your strength, for your kindness, for everything you are." She leaned in and kissed him, softly and slowly. When they separated, she whispered, "I love you too." The farm, lit by the house lights, seemed more alive than ever. Inside, Mrs. Gloria laughed with Roderick and Christine, planning new projects. Outside, Marina and Bruno began to write their own chapter. The storm had passed, and in place of destruction, something new and beautiful was growing. 3 years passed since that fateful day in court. Gloria's essence, now exported to 15 countries, Sun Valley Farm had become a model of sustainable agriculture. And the Davies family, though scarred, had found a fragile but real balance. Marina and Bruno married in a simple ceremony in the farm's chapel, with Mrs. Gloria walking without a cane to give away her daughter. Roderick was the best man, Christine the maid of honor, and everyone cried with emotion. 2 years later, Helen was born, the first grandchild, followed by Peter, Christine's son, with a history teacher she had met in Cranbrook. Life seemed to have finally found its rhythm, until that September morning. Mrs. Gloria woke up with severe abdominal pain. She tried to ignore it, as she always did, but when she started vomiting, Marina immediately took her to the hospital. The tests brought the news no one wanted to hear: pancreatic cancer, advanced stage. The doctor was direct. With aggressive treatment, she has 6 months to a year. Without treatment, perhaps 3 months. Marina felt the world collapse again. It wasn't fair. After everything her mother had faced, after surviving the stroke, rebuilding the family, now this. But Mrs. Gloria surprised everyone. "I will fight. I survived worse. I will survive this too." And she fought. Aggressive chemotherapy that left her weak and nauseated. Radiotherapy that burned her skin. Emergency hospitalizations when complications arose. But through it all, she kept her spirit firm, supported by her 3 children who now took turns by her side. It was during one of those nights in the hospital that the true test of family unity happened. Marina was in the room with Mrs. Gloria when Roderick and Christine entered, bringing flowers and fresh fruit. "How are you, Mum?" Christine carefully fluffed the pillow, tired, but happy to see you 3 here together. Roderick sat on the edge of the bed. "Mum, I need to tell you something. I got a good job in Manchester. A company offered me a management position. It pays well, very well." Marina felt her heart tighten. He was leaving. After everything, he was going to abandon the farm and go back to his old life. But Roderick continued. "And I refused. I said, my place is here, with my family, working the land you built. I won't make the same mistake twice." Mrs. Gloria held her son's hand, her eyes shining. "You've grown, my son." Christine also spoke. "I received an offer to return to Los Angeles. My old company wants to hire me back. But I also refused. My life is here now, with Peter, with you." The 3 women embraced, and for the first time in decades, there was no resentment or bitterness, only love. The following months were an emotional roller coaster. Mrs. Gloria had good days, where she could walk in the garden and play with her grandchildren, and bad days, where she could barely get out of bed. But always, she maintained her dignity and strength. It was during one of those good days that she called her 3 children for a serious conversation. They gathered in the farm's living room, the same one where so many stories had unfolded. "I need to tell you a truth I kept for a long time to protect you." Marina frowned. "What truth, Mum?" Mrs. Gloria took a deep breath. "About your father. You always believed he was a hero, that he worked until the end, that he loved us until his last day. But it wasn't like that. The silence in the room was absolute. Roderick was the first to speak. "What do you mean?" "Your father abandoned us when Marina was 2 years old. He wasn't a victim of an accident. He chose to leave our lives. He chose another woman, another family." Christine went pale. "What? You always said he was a hard worker, that he died tired but happy." Mrs. Gloria wiped away the tears that began to fall. "I lied. I lied to protect his image, so you wouldn't grow up with anger, with abandonment in your hearts. When he left, he only left a letter saying he couldn't live that life anymore, that he wanted more, that he loved us, but not enough to stay." Marina felt as if the ground had disappeared. All her life she had idealized the father she barely knew, the hard-working, dedicated man who had given everything for his family. And it was all a lie. "Where is he now?" Roderick asked, his voice tense. "I don't know. I never heard from him again. But I found out years later that he started another family in New York City. He had 2 more children. He lived the life he wanted while I raised you alone." Christine exploded. "Why didn't you ever tell us? Why did you keep this for so long? Because I didn't want you to grow up hating your own father. Because hate destroys. I knew that. I preferred to carry this burden alone." Marina stood up and hugged her mother. "You shouldn't have carried that alone. We could have helped, Mrs. Gloria smiled sadly. "You were children. It was my role to protect. And I did the best I could." The revelation changed something fundamental between the siblings. Roderick, who always felt he needed to be the man of the house but never knew how, finally understood the weight his mother had carried alone. Christine, who always sought external validation, realized that her mother had been an example of strength and sacrifice far greater than any successful businesswoman. And Marina understood that her father's abandonment was the original wound that shaped the entire family dynamic. Mrs. Gloria, fearing that her children would suffer as she suffered, ended up raising children who sought different fulfillments. Roderick in his career, Christine in luxury, and Marina in excessive devotion. That night, the 3 siblings sat on the veranda and talked until dawn. They talked about the father they never truly knew, about the mother who sacrificed everything, about the mistakes they had made and the choices they had chosen. "I understand now why you stayed," Roderick said to Marina. "You were afraid of abandoning like he abandoned." Marina nodded. "And you fled because you were afraid of being trapped like Mum was." Christine shook her head. "We spent years making the wrong choices for the right reasons. Or for the wrong reasons," Roderick corrected. "But now we have the chance to do things differently." The following months were of intensive care. Mrs. Gloria fought bravely, but the cancer was relentless. There were times when everyone thought it was the end, but she always came back, always fought another day, until she could no more. On a calm spring morning, surrounded by her 3 children, her grandchildren, Bruno and Christine's husband, Mrs. Gloria closed her eyes for the last time. There was no drama, no pain, only peace. Marina held her mother's hand until she felt her last breath. When she finally let go, Roderick hugged her from the right and Christine from the left. The 3 cried together, united in pain, but also in gratitude for having had more time, for having fixed what was broken, for having become family again. The funeral was simple, as Mrs. Gloria had requested. She was buried on the farm, under the centuries-old jabuticaba tree she loved so much. Hundreds of people attended. Employees, clients, friends, people whose lives she had touched over decades. During the burial, Marina read a letter she had written the night before. "Mum, you taught us that family isn't about perfection. It's about choice. Choosing to stay when it would be easier to leave. Choosing to forgive when it would be easier to hold a grudge. Choosing to rebuild when it would be easier to let it crumble. You made those choices every day of your life, and now we promise to continue making those choices, in your honor, forever." After the ceremony, the 3 siblings gathered in the farm office to read Mrs. Gloria's final will. The lawyer opened the sealed envelope and read aloud, "I leave Sun Valley Farm to the 3 of you in equal parts, on the condition that you work together in its administration. I leave Gloria's essence to Marina, recognizing that it was she who saved and transformed it. I leave my house in Cranbrook to Christine, so she always has a home. And I leave my collection of books and photographs to Roderick, so he remembers the stories and preserves our memory." But there was more, a personal letter addressed to the 3 of them. "My beloved children, if you are reading this, it is because I have finally rested. Do not cry for me. I lived a full life. I saw my children become better people, I met my grandchildren, and I rebuilt what I thought was lost forever. My greatest pride was not the empire I built. It was seeing you 3, after so much pain, choose to be family again. Keep it up, take care of each other. And remember, love always wins, but sometimes it has to fight very hard to do so." Marina, Roderick and Christine finished reading with tears streaming down their faces, but this time they were tears of gratitude, not sadness. Gratitude for having had a second chance. Gratitude for having learned the lessons before it was too late. Life would continue. There would be challenges, disagreements, difficult moments, but now they would face them together, as Mrs. Gloria had always wanted. and in the farm's garden, under the jabuticaba tree, a new sapling was planted by the three siblings, a tree that would grow strong, with deep roots, symbolizing the family they had chosen to be. 5 years after Mrs. Gloria's passing, Sun Valley Farm was unrecognizable. Where before there were only lavender and chamomile plantations, now stretched a model agricultural complex, technological greenhouses, a botanical research laboratory, an educational visitor center, and even a small rural guest house that welcomed tourists from all over the world. Gloria's essence had become a multinational. Stores in Paris, Tokyo, New York. Marina, now 38, was CEO of a company valued at over £200 million. Her face graced the covers of international business magazines, always accompanied by headlines about sustainability and family entrepreneurship. But on that New Year's Eve, Marina was not at any glamorous event or business meeting. She was in the farm kitchen, preparing her mother's special French toast, surrounded by Helen, now 7, and Peter, 5, who were competing to lick the frosting bowl. "Mummy, when will Grandma Gloria come back?" Helen asked with the innocence of children. Marina crouched down to her daughter's height and brushed a lock of hair from her face. "Grandma is always here, my love, in every flower that grows in the garden, in every product we make, in every good thing this family does." "And is she proud of you?" Helen insisted. "I hope so, darling, I hope so." Bruno entered the kitchen carrying more ingredients. "The hall is almost ready. Your brother outdid himself with the decorations this year." Marina smiled. "Roderick turned decorator now?" "Worse. He turned perfectionist." In the living room, Roderick was indeed adjusting every detail of the New Year's decoration. At 42, he had completely transformed. The arrogant executive in an expensive suit now wore jeans and a cotton shirt, his hands calloused from working the land, and a genuine smile that had never existed before. He had married Martha, an agronomist he met during an organic products fair, and together they managed the agricultural part of the farm. Christine entered through the front door, carrying bags. "Sorry I'm late." The traffic in Manchester was impossible. At 45, Christine was also unrecognizable. The woman who lived for appearances and expensive brands now wore simple but elegant clothes, almost all bought at thrift stores she herself frequented. She managed the international branch of Gloria's Essence, traveled the world closing contracts, but always returned to Cranbrook on weekends. Her husband Ferdinand was a university professor and writer, and together they raised Peter with love and simplicity. The house filled up. Mrs. Adelaide arrived accompanied by distant cousins, Henry and his family, old farm employees who had become part of the extended family. Bruno set up the tables in the garden, under decorative lights that transformed the farm into a magical setting. When everyone was gathered, Marina called for attention by gently tapping a glass. The chatter ceased and all eyes turned to her. "I want to make a toast, not just to celebrate the new year, but to celebrate this family. 7 years ago we were broken. Betrayal, pain, resentment. I thought we would never be able to look at each other again without seeing the mistakes of the past." She looked at Roderick and Christine, who returned her gaze with emotional eyes. "But I learned something important. I learned that family is a choice we make every day. It's choosing to forgive when it would be easier to hold a grudge. It's choosing to rebuild when it would be easier to abandon. Our mother taught us that, not with words, but by example." Marina raised her glass. "So I toast to Mrs. Gloria, who planted seeds of love even when everything seemed lost. I toast to my siblings, who had the courage to change. I toast to everyone here, who are part of this story. And I toast to the future, which we will build together, with honesty, hard work, and much love." The glasses were raised and the toast echoed through the garden. "Cheers to Mrs. Gloria." After dinner, when fireworks lit up the Cranbrook sky, Marina stepped away from the party and walked to the grave under the jabuticaba tree. The simple marble headstone shone under the moonlight. "Gloria Davies," it read. "Matriarch, entrepreneur, mother." Marina sat on the grass and began to speak, as she always did when she visited there. "Hi, Mum. Another year has passed, and what a year." The company opened branches in 3 new countries. The farm won a sustainability award. Helen got excellent grades in school. Peter spoke his first complete words. "And you know the most incredible thing? Roderick, Christine, and I worked together all year without a serious fight. I don't think you expected that, did you?" The wind gently rustled the branches of the jabuticaba tree, as if in response. "I think a lot about everything that happened. The betrayal, the trial, the silent war I fought. For a long time, I thought my greatest victory had been defeating my siblings that day, proving that I was right and they were wrong. But today, I understand that the true victory came later. It was when I chose to give them a chance, when you chose to forgive, when all of us chose to rebuild instead of completely destroy." Marina wiped away a tear. "You always knew, Mum, you always knew that strength is not in never falling, but in having the courage to get up. And you gave us that courage." Footsteps approached. Roderick and Christine walked up to her and sat down, one on each side, as they did when they were children. Talking to Mum again. Roderick smiled. "Always." Christine placed fresh flowers beside the headstone. "What do you think she would say if she were here now?" Marina thought for a moment. "I think she would say we're on the right track. That family isn't about being perfect, but about being present, about choosing to stay." Roderick looked at the stars. "You know what struck me most about that day in court? When I left there, I was sure my life was over, that I would never be anyone again. But Mum showed me that sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what truly matters." Christine agreed. "I spent years chasing status, money, recognition, and in the end, the only time I felt truly fulfilled was when I organized that dusty inventory and Marina praised me for the work. That's when I understood that the respect I sought would only come from true actions, not appearances." The three were silent for a moment, each lost in their own reflections. Then Marina stood up and extended her hands to her siblings. "Let's go back to the party. We have a family waiting." As they walked back, Helen ran to meet them. "Aunt Christine, Uncle Roderick, come see. We found a bird's nest." The three adults followed the girl, smiling. There was the future, a new generation that would grow up surrounded by love, without the wounds they carried. A generation that would know, from an early age, the value of family, honest work, forgiveness. Midnight arrived with explosions of fireworks and warm hugs. Marina kissed Bruno and their children, hugged her siblings, thanked Mrs. Adelaide, and looked up at the starry sky, knowing that somewhere Mrs. Gloria was smiling. In the years that followed, the story of the Davies family became an inspiration. Marina was invited to speak at conferences where she told, without hiding the difficult parts, how her family almost destroyed itself and how they chose to rebuild. Roderick wrote a book on sustainable agriculture that became a reference. Christine created a mentorship program for young female entrepreneurs. Sun Valley Farm and Gloria's Essence continued to grow, but never lost their essence. A family business built on sacrifice, overcome by betrayal and resurrected by forgiveness. Marina, now 40, sitting in what was once her mother's office, looked at the framed photo on the wall. Mrs. Gloria on the opening day of the first Gloria's Essence store, smiling proudly, with her 3 young children beside her. Simpler times, more innocent times. She touched the photo softly and whispered, "We did it, Mum. It wasn't the way you imagined. There was pain, there was falling, there was almost giving up, but we did it. And with each passing day, I understand more what you were trying to teach us, that true love is not one that never faces storms. It is one that, even broken, chooses to recompose itself." Helen, now 12, entered the office. "Mum, Uncle Roderick is calling. He says the new products have arrived from France and he wants your approval." Marina smiled and stood up. "Let's go then." As she walked through the corridors of the company she helped save, passing employees who greeted her with genuine respect, Marina reflected on her journey. From betrayed nurse to successful CEO, from lonely daughter to matriarch of a reborn family, from victim to protagonist of her own story. And the biggest lesson she carried? That true strength is not in never falling, but in getting up as many times as necessary. That family is not defined by blood, but by daily choices of love and commitment. And that forgiveness, though difficult, is the only path to true peace. The farm would continue to flourish. The company would continue to grow. The children would continue to learn. and Mrs. Gloria's legacy would live forever, not in stone or bronze, but in the hearts and actions of those she loved and who loved her back. That night, Marina wrote in her diary, as she had done since the day of the trial, "7 years ago, I discovered the worst betrayal possible. My siblings tried to steal everything our mother built. I could have chosen the path of eternal revenge, of hatred that never heals, but I chose differently. I chose to fight for justice, yes, but I also chose to leave the door open for forgiveness. And today, looking back, I know it was the best choice I ever made. Because today, I don't just have a business empire, I have a family. A real one, complete, imperfect, but mine." She closed the diary and turned off the light. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new battles, new obstacles. But it didn't matter, because now she wasn't alone. She never would be again. The story of the Davies family was not about a perfect happy ending. It was about courageous choices, difficult forgiveness, and love that refuses to give up. It was about 3 siblings who got lost and found each other again. It was about a mother who, even after leaving, continued to unite her children through the legacy she left. And as the lights of the farm went out one by one, the centuries-old jabuticaba tree remained there, firm and strong, guarding memories of past generations and promising shelter for those to come. Because in the end, the only thing that truly matters is love and the courage to choose it every day, even when it hurts. The end. If Marina and the Davies family's journey touched your heart, know that stories of overcoming, forgiveness, and new beginnings are part of the human essence. We all face betrayals, pain, and difficult choices. But as Mrs. Gloria taught, true strength lies in getting up and moving forward. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe for more emotional narratives, and share in the comments. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between justice and forgiveness? What was your experience like? Your story can inspire thousands of people. See you next time.